Welcome to Homefront, a monthly program produced by the Commission on Veterans Affairs and devoted to topics and services for veterans and their families in Montgomery County. I'm Michael Subin. As a public servant at the local, state, national, and even international level now, my guest today is a Montgomery County resident with a very distinguished career. It's an honor to welcome Senator Chris Van Hollen, Senator for the state of Maryland. Senator, last time we called you Senator, you were in the Maryland State House.
It's good to be with you here, Mike, in a new capacity.
Well, it's fantastic. You're a hero in the veterans community here, and we are extremely appreciative of everything that you've done for us.
Well, I do want to take this opportunity to thank you for all the work that you've done on the Commission, Veterans Commission, and it's been an honor to work with you.
It's been very successful because of the work that you've done, and Austin Morris, who represents you very ably on the commission, really adds a lot for us. Senator, what are your priorities for veterans now that you're in the Senate and not in Congress anymore?
Well, my priorities remain the same, but I'm, of course, focused now not only on Montgomery County and Frederick County, but on the whole state of Maryland, and really the whole country, because as you know, we have a real obligation to make sure we're there for the men and women who've been there for us in the military. And that means making sure they have access to the very best care our country can provide. And so we need to do that at veterans hospitals. We need to do that by creating outpatient clinics like the one that we're helping to launch in Montgomery County and Gaithersburg. Hopefully that'll come online at the end of this year. And we need to make sure that those who have been disabled in conflict have their claims quickly adjudicated so that we can move forward. And I should say, serving in the military, as you well know, because you served in the military, really is a family affair. So we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to extend support to the families of folks in the military.
No, and that's a very good point. I mean, we all, as veterans, consider ourselves brothers and sisters, so there's that family, and that gets extended to everybody else's family. Speaking of the outpatient clinic, what we call the CBOC, Community-Based Outpatient Clinic, what are your thoughts of the recently revealed problems in the VA Medical Center in D.C.? What can be done to ensure that those issues are never repeated, and how's that going to affect the CBOC coming online?
Yeah, so this was a very alarming development. I do want to salute the Inspector General at the VA for blowing the whistle on what was happening. He began to look into what was happening at the VA in DC and decided he better issue a preliminary report early when he began to detect real problems, very scary things, like people who'd been in the middle of an operation and the equipment that they needed to perform that operation wasn't available. They had to go scramble through the inventory, sometimes have to go to private hospitals to get it in the middle of an operation. That's an outrage. And so the delegation, the congressional delegation from this entire region, Virginia, Maryland, DC, is already in touch with the folks at the VA. I'm glad that they've made some personnel changes. We need to hold people accountable. We need to investigate whether any veteran was harmed in this process. And most importantly, we need to make sure that corrections are made immediately. With respect to the CBOC, the Community-Based Outpatient Clinic, we're told that will continue on schedule. And we're very much hoping, as I said, to have that open in Gaithersburg in December. As you know, we were at the opening at the ribbon cutting, the groundbreaking together, and this was something many of us worked for years with the VA to finally secure, to make sure that veterans in Montgomery County in our area have that Gaithersburg place to go to, so they don't have to travel to DC.
That clinic has been one of our highest priority for years, and it's our sense that but for you, this wouldn't have happened. And it is scary, as you said, the IG's report, which was very extensive, very disturbing. Hopefully those issues can be overcome soon. What do you think of the president's budget priorities for veterans? We have a new president, new priorities. What does it look like?
Sure. So there's the good news and the bad news. The good news is that the President Trump's budget for veterans, the Department of Veterans Affairs, is a good, healthy budget. The good news is that has been a bipartisan commitment over the years. President Obama also had strong budget requests for the VA, and as the person who was the senior Democrat on the Budget Committee in the House and now serving on the Budget and Appropriations Committee in the Senate, I'm going to work really hard to make sure the resources are there for the VA system, and also to address the backlog in claims. But I will say that there are other very deep cuts proposed to the budget under the Trump proposal that will still impact veterans, even though they're not direct cuts to the Department of Veterans Affairs. So, for example, in the housing area, very deep cuts proposed for HUD. And as you know, because we've worked on this together, we've worked to reduce veterans' homelessness by securing what are called VASH vouchers, housing vouchers to help low-income and homeless veterans. And in Montgomery County, working together, we were able to secure enough VASH vouchers to dramatically reduce veterans' homelessness. In fact, we've been declared a veterans homeless-free zone. We need to keep at it, and we need to do that for the rest of the state and the rest of the country. But I just raise that because the money for the VASH vouchers is not in the Veterans Administration. It's in the housing budget. So the Trump proposals to cut the housing budgets could have a very negative impact on that.
I think you make two very good points here. One, the nonpartisan nature of the veterans' budgets. That is something that we feel should not be done at the whim of politics. And with Congress being so partisan in recent history, there are pieces that should not be. The other piece is that these are cross-cutting issues going from department to department. As you said, the VASH vouchers coming under HUD, directed to veterans, but coming out of there. Do you anticipate that they'll be available again? I think we haven't had them for several years.
Yeah, I'm going to work very hard, again, on a bipartisan basis to try to get the funding for VASH vouchers, both for Montgomery County and other parts of our state and really around the country. But that's an example of where a program that impacts veterans that's not in the Veterans Administration is something that we've got to work hard to protect. I mean, another one is Meals on Wheels. It turns out that about 500,000 veterans around the country get assistance through the Meals on Wheels program. You know, they've proposed to essentially zero the funding for that program zero it out. So that would also have a negative impact. So we need to look at the entire budget to get a sense of what the impact on veterans would be. Again, good news, the Veterans Administration budget, a healthy budget. Elsewhere in the budget, not so much. And so let's work together to address these challenges.
Yeah, and your awareness of these related issues, which doesn't show up on paper, but they're important. Speaking of the care and all, PTSD and suicide are very major concerns in the veterans community. Suicide rates are high. Talk about VA claims. You have people committing suicide downstream from their service, but it's related, and it's hard to get our arms around that. So mental health care is a very important issue for the overall health and success of veterans. What's being done to ensure that the veterans have access to mental health care?
Well, you're right, Mike, and as somebody who is in the service, you know that the wounds of war have changed over time. We still, of course, get people who are physically wounded and need the care they get at places like Walter Reed, and we're very proud that Walter Reed has got its home here in our community. But with the development of body armor and more protective uniforms, we're seeing a lot more, of course, in the area of mental health from PTSD. And if you go over to Walter Reed, the good news is we've invested a lot of money in research for traumatic brain injury and PTSD. So the research is coming along well. The care is what we need to make sure is provided. And that means that we also need to provide support to the people who are providing support networks. And we, in fact, have passed legislation to do that so that more family members who are taking time to leave their jobs to care for a loved one with PTSD or other ailments has that opportunity. But this is an area where we're going to have to devote sufficient resources as a country. And as you say,
Absolutely.
It's really awful to see the high suicide rates. One of the things that has to happen, and it's happening, is to get rid of the stigma associated with PTSD and mental illness. This is something we need to address as a society. In the military, it was also something that needs to be overcome, and we're making progress. But the notion that somebody would be somehow embarrassed to report that they had a severe mental illness or PTSD, we need to overcome that to make sure people get the help they need.
It's viewed as a career ender. If somebody says, I have mental health problems or behavioral problems that need to be addressed, especially things like PTSD, which don't go away because you're off the battlefield.
Exactly.
One of the issues that you brought up in terms of Walter Reed, not veterans related specifically, it's a very community issue in terms of traffic and what's being done to accommodate the additional people coming in, the additional services being offered there.
Well, no, I'm glad you raised this because a number of years ago there was the BRAC process, and Walter Reed in the District of Columbia, of course, was closed down, and those services were moved to the current Bethesda location, which of course used to be Bethesda Naval. And so we wanted to make sure that veterans could get access to care and not be lined up in huge traffic jams. And of course, for the surrounding community, it's been important that people not have a terribly congested area. So I'm pleased we were able to get funds to address that issue.
Okay. Well, thank you, Senator Van Hollen. We're ecstatic you're senator now and serving veterans in the entire state. Well, that's it for this month's Homefront. Don't forget that you can access information about county services for veterans by going to the county website or by calling the Commission Staff Liaison at 240-777-1256. I'm Mike Subin. Thanks for watching.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Did you know there are more than 10,000 county government phone numbers? But there's only one number you need to remember for non-emergency calls, 311. MC311 is Montgomery County government's online telephone information system. Need information? Have a problem or complaint? Trying to locate a county government facility? Call 311. The call center is open Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The website is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.